Привет, American piece of shit! Welcome to Gritty Reboot, now sponsored by KGB. Listen to all the podcasts and rate 5-star review, or Stasi will come to home, put bullets in back of Grandmama's neck. I will now hand over to American host, who is doing this of own free will and is not chained to desk. Hi, everyone! Hunter Markham here, host of Gritty Reboot. If you hear any clanking in the background, that is not my shackles. And luckily, far away from me and far from Soviet oversight are my co-hosts, Kevin James.
Hello.
And Sarah Dunaway.
Hello.
I really appreciate that impressive Russian accent that I can only assume was done as a tribute to Netflix's Glow being canceled a couple days ago.
I never saw that show. I didn't know there was a Russian accent involved for any characters.
Well, so you know how it's about like female wrestlers, right?
Yes, I do. I'm that much I'm aware.
So I don't know if you know this, but sometimes, especially before the now times, wrestlers would play offensive caricatures of other nations, especially nations we weren't friends with. So one of the heels, am I using that terminology correctly, Hunter? Like the not good wrestlers?
I think so. Again, I have seen almost zero professional wrestling, and I wish I could say I'd seen zero professional wrestling.
That's more than I've seen. But yeah, so one of the bad wrestlers plays Stoya the Destroyer, and it's played by Alison Brie, who does the most adorable bad Russian accent, which is part of the charm of the show, because it's supposed to be a bad Russian accent.
This is where we talk about... Yeah, I was about to say, Sarah, this is where you unleash on all professional wrestling knowledge.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention my purposefully bad Russian accent that I did that one time in this skit. Very much 100% on purpose, and not that I couldn't remember how to do one.
You know that I was going to leave off the table. I just figured you would swoop in here with discussion of Hulkamania or WrestleMania. What? All right, so Hulkamania was like a cultural phenomenon, and WrestleMania was an event where there was lots of wrestling.
That sounds plausible.
I could be
All
totally
I know
wrong.
is that Hulk Hogan is a real American.
Yes.
I know basically nothing about wrestling and cannot help.
I know basically nothing about wrestling, so this is not a podcast about wrestling. This is a podcast where we discuss TV shows, generally in the horror supernatural genre, and we are on Season 1, Episode 13, the season finale of Wynonna Earp, and holy shit, this fucking sucked.
Yes, I walked the line. I'm not sure you did.
I was laughing for like the last 5 minutes of this season finale, which is not a good sign.
I had so many things where it either didn't make sense or it just was bad and terrible and upset me deeply. So, where does one begin?
I would like to start with how Dolls and Doc get Wynonna out of the party, which is they throw her out of a window face first like she's like a plank of wood, Looney Tunes style.
oh yeah, that was great. The opening shot, because stepping back, last episode, where they left us on a cliffhanger where Bobo Del Rey says, "Everybody, bring Wynonna to me, dead or alive. You guys are infected with a poison that makes you froth at the mouth." This episode ends with a shot of them kind of just standing in the middle of a less than angry mob. It kind of just looks like Wynonna, Doc, and Dolls are at a red carpet event, and the fans are tentatively reaching over the velvet rope. It's not terrifying or suspenseful.
Yeah, it was also just a weird scene. Doc pulled out his gun and shot like at hip level somewhere off screen, and then when I was like, "Hey, don't try to shoot at people," and it's like, did he shoot at people, near people, past people? What was that?
Did he kill a man?
Yeah.
It's very unclear, and apparently we're not supposed to care. Yeah, it's and then let's see, we go outside, and
Oh, yeah, I turned off the show, too, and I just kind of went outside for a minute.
Yeah,
Just to breathe.
there were many points in this show where I was like, I cannot pay attention to this. Bobo and Willa start reminiscing about the good old times when they were in a somehow paternal relationship that was also romantic. I don't know, I'm deeply uncomfortable with it.
I was
Yeah,
say, those are
it's
two
so
types
weird.
of relationships you don't mix.
Nope.
That was weird. The opening scene where they're fighting off this mob could have been better if they were running through this old hotel and trying to barricade doors and there was some sense of suspense.
They very clearly only had, like, that 100 square feet to work with, though.
Yes.
True, that must have been it. And going back to what you said, Sarah, everything between Bobo and Willa was so weird and also non-romantic.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, let me look at you, but he's also super creepy and weird, and he stands so close to her, the only part of her he could see would be the pores on the bridge of her nose. It was just gross, and then she's like, let's have a quickie. And Bobo, showing unprecedented restraint, says, no, there's no time for that now.
Quickies famously take too long.
But... Oh, what was the other stupid line? He has some line where she says something to him whenever he's like, oh, I didn't think you were going to show up. She says, oh, ye of little faith. And he said, but I make up for it in other areas. So he's literally just making a comment about how he has a big dick in the midst of this scene. And it's supposed to be kind of a love scene, but it's gross. And it's also Bobo, who we've seen banging hookers left, right, and center and making passes at Waverly and Wynonna and comments about how they're bangable even though they're scrotum boils.
This all feels so weirdly retcon-y, especially because we learn later, apparently the deal was Willa was stolen from Bobo just before she was going to turn 27, and Constance Clutie was like, hey, get me my boy's bones, and you will get Willa back. That did not seem to be Bobo's motivation, because he was definitely banging hookers the whole time he was searching for bones. And
smashed some of the bones.
Yeah.
So, like, how much does he actually care about any of this? I don't know. I don't understand.
There's a later scene where Bobo's talking to Waverly and saying, oh, I loved your sister, and my last name is Norwegian for swan, and swan's mate for life. And I was just like, this is the guy whose excuse for getting a blowjob from two succubi simultaneously was, it's the poker spectacular.
Yeah, you hit on one of my early cringe lines, Hunter, which seems pulled from one of our early skits in the season. Spain, Norwegian for swan. You never cease to impress me, Waverly.
She can use Google Translate. But I don't buy that this is any kind of love story and they play it like we're supposed to believe it. No one just calls him out and says, wait, like, you are also making passes at me, Wynonna. And usually when you're in love with someone, kind of a baseline thing is you don't make sexual advances towards their sister.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I may call me old-fashioned.
Yeah. The whole Bobo character just feels wrong in this episode. In that same scene, he talks to Waverly and was like, and I also thought about saving you from Wynonna Earp too. And it's like, Bobo was motivated by compassion and altruism this whole time? That's odd. That doesn't sound
right. We didn't even have any hint of that. It's not like we were like wondering what Bobo's motivations were. That was not set up for us whatsoever. So it feels really shoved in right now. And
we have this gross kiss between Bobo and Willow when they meet on the moonlit street, where Bobo's not a good kisser. I expect him to say something like, well, hookers don't usually let you kiss on the mouth, so I'm pretty new to this. And then he does an audible tooth click chomp noise after kissing her, which, again, less than romantic. When we're trying to talk, when later in the episode he's like, I'm a swan and swans mate for life.
Yeah.
Bobo and Willa try and leave the Ghost River Triangle, but Bobo starts burning up, not just with desire, but with hellfire, and they have to go back, and it turns out Peacemaker is not in Willa's possession anymore, and it's gone.
And she needs that to lead him over the threshold. You're not the heir unless you have Peacemaker.
Which, again, something that we didn't know until this exact moment, so there wasn't a lot of suspense and the stakes.
But apparently Waverly knew that because she had the foresight to steal the gun from Willa.
Right, but again, we don't have any build up for that either. We don't have her figuring it out or a scene of her taking it. We just have like, oh, that's apparently what happened.
Yeah.
It's just, that is a thing that we just established right now in the show. One of our principal characters knew it already. None of this was ever revealed in a discussion. Okay, you just have to accept this and move on. And I'm not prepared to do that.
So then we start seeing poisoned townspeople, and this was very confusing, and Kevin and I had a lot of discussion about this because we were like, okay, so Champ got really aggro and then was like foaming from the mouth on the floor within just a couple minutes of drinking the poison. Other people who were at this party, there's a bunch of shots where it's clearly the next day, like it's sunlight, and they're just vaguely foaming at the mouth and still talking, or they're, you know, kind of rabid acting, or like the sheriff just kind of seems like maybe...
He's got like indigestion is what it looks like.
He's just kind of sweaty. Like, what? This is a very strange substance that they have ingested, apparently, because it has wildly different timelines and effects on everyone.
These people most seem disgruntled, and I think one of the things you mentioned was a real boner killer for me with this episode, which was after Willa and Bobo can't cross over the line, Willa says, "Oh, don't worry. I know that all the legends say you have to leave on the winter solstice with the heir for this all to work, but we have till tomorrow at sundown." So there's all of the tension and this race against the clock thing that would make for a tight, gripping story instantly out the window, and then it raises all these questions of, Bobo said the poison would kill the townspeople, but it's now been nearly 24 hours, and they are wandering around in gangs, wielding weapons, and seem basically unharmed.
Also,
It's
like, what
weird.
is the thing with the solstice? Is it like, yes, you have to do it on the solstice, but like Tokyo time? Or like, what is the... what is this?
Yeah, I thought the solstice was an event. I guess it's the shortest day of the year. Do you just have that 24 hours period? Do you have just the between sunrise and sunset, that short day to get out? Do you have the super long night to get out? Again,
It has to do with the moon's relationship to the sun. It's not like you can be like, oh, well, close enough. Like, I don't get it.
well, the
It
legends
has
say
to be on
winter
the solstice, plus or minus 2.4 days.
Solstice-ish, you know.
Ish. There's wiggle room in these ancient texts. You know, if you don't have Eye of Newt, then Eye of Salamander's a pretty good substitute. It's not, again, none of this is explained, and the fact that they just out of nowhere gave the plot another day zapped it of any sort of tension of we have to get to the bottom of this fast. It's like, well, we can't really dilly-dally, but yeah, we got a lot of time to plan.
I will say, though, there's a lot we're going to complain about, but, like, one good scene to single out here is they finally explain to Nicole what's going on. She's like, thanks, now I get it. A lot of this makes sense. I'm in. Let's go.
Yes, that was good, but the zombified or whatever they're supposed to be townspeople, they don't look that affected, and they're just kind of in the daylight walking around sweaty with a gun. Just doesn't seem like that different from normal in purgatory. Like, it just doesn't have the effect I think they're going for.
No, I don't know what effect they're going for at some points. I did like Officer Nicole's moment where whenever Doc Holliday is kind of like, enough of this shit, here's the straight poop. And she's just like, okay, I accept this and I'm ready to kill revenants.
Yeah, it was good.
She's one of the best characters.
Her and Waverly.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much the only two that we like.
No, Wynona's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Wynonna's good. I guess this is my biggest complaint with this episode. And
Was that Wynonna wasn't in her panties running around long enough? I understand, Hunter. That was
not
only
where I
like a
was going.
4-minute scene. It
That
could
was-
have been so much longer.
honestly, that felt gratuitous. The fact that they
Yes.
just kept their main star in lingerie across scenes.
Like, yes, I know she was gonna take off her dress, obviously, because that's impractical. But like, you don't just take off your dress in winter in Canada and then go like, I guess I'll find pants later. Like, no.
It's also funny because like they cross-cut between the scenes, like Hunter's saying, and when it comes back, she's got like a loose-fitting sweater on, but still no pants.
Yes, and that was over the top. I think that really ties into my biggest gripe, which is they made Wynonna way less cool than usual in this episode, at least how it felt to me. Where usually she's really badass and competent, and she has her head on a swivel, and it almost seemed like in this episode, this finale that's supposed to sum up her entire arc for the season, that she was kind of a background character and didn't have that much agency.
Yes.
And I think that's why at the end it didn't land when she was saying all this stuff of like, I'm ready for anything, I'm a badass. I'm like, this episode spent several scenes of you struggling to get out of a dress and then scampering around in your underwear. It doesn't exactly scream heroine whenever you have her struggling to fight this little scrawny ex-boyfriend of hers who showed up at her house foaming at the mouth on poison.
Yeah. It was underwhelming.
There's also a scene that's supposed to have a lot of tension early on where Willa points a gun at her sisters. Willa reveals that she's actually not, on
Yeah,
their
we're
side.
literally getting there.
Yeah, and then she pulls out a gun and threatens to shoot Officer Hot, and Waverly's like, no, wait, I love her. And I just... If Waverly hadn't said not only is she my girlfriend, but I'm in love with her, was Wynonna just going to let Willa shoot her? Is that the implication here?
Well, I'm kind of just banging her, so it's okay if you shoot her. What's the scale for I'm gonna save this innocent person's life?
Yeah, Waverly's like begging, and Wynonna's not gonna hand over the peacemaker. She's gonna let Willa shoot her, I guess, and is just kind of like at the last minute, like, oh, you love her? All right, fine.
What I also hate about the scene is this is where it gets to part of what I think is like the weakest aspects of this specific episode, getting into really predictable shit. Like,
Yep.
as soon as Nicole Hott came in, I was like, what? Just give it to her now. You know she's going to shoot her anyway.
Yeah.
And then she shoots her anyway. Like, I don't know why you guys are complaining. She's obviously wearing Kevlar. And then Nicole Hott, I'm wearing, bulletproof vest. It's kind of standard for this kind of thing. And it's like, it was just so obvious. Like, Sarah was half paying attention at this point. She's like, yeah, it's pretty obvious to me too.
I knew the second she walked in because we'd had a previous scene where Dolls and Doc Holliday were getting suited up for this whole mission, and Dolls is pulling out several bulletproof vests from his little gun safe.
Yeah.
So we've seen that in the show. Haven't been living in a small hollow in the center of the earth for our entire lives. So we know this trope back to front. The other one this is one I'm fully depending on you, Sarah, because I did not Wikipedia or Google any of this information. At one point, while Waverly's running away and has the peacemaker, she gets chloroformed before she gets captured by the sheriff's daughter who is poisoned. But I think my question is more, is chloroform still a thing that is manufactured and is available to kidnap people? Because that seems like a 1920s ass trope.
I believe it is. It does not work nearly as quickly as it does on TV, from what I understand. Like, you can't just put it over someone's mouth and they just instantly crumple to the ground.
It just seems really lazy at this point. And there's been so many joke movies that have already lampooned the entire trope of chloroform that you have to come up with something better than that. And by that I mean, don't do the thing they did, which was a frying pan to the back of the head, because they were just layering tropes on top of tropes.
Yeah.
I mean, Waverly's not that big. Just grab her. Like, I mean... not to be mean, but like, if you just grab it, have another person help you, and you're
Pick
done.
her up,
You got
put her in your pocket, you're good.
You're fine. You're done.
She's like 5'3", 110 pounds tops.
Yep.
Girl is
Take her.
small.
Just grab her. Like,
I don't get why they had to resort to this trope, and who the hell has just access to chloroform-soaked rags? It was... It opened a can of worms that shouldn't have been opened, and it was stupid and at the same time predictable. And you want to do things, ideally, in your work of fiction that surprises audiences and feels creative and are things people haven't seen before.
Well,
and they just didn't.
I think the special problem here is, like, the rest of the show was not like this. Like, it was not this tropey or predictable. And so to have these less original elements intrude in the final episode of the season was a real kick in the groin.
I agree with that completely, because there are several episodes in this season that I really enjoyed, and it felt like things were somewhat different and new, but they really phoned it in on on the finale, which seems like the wrong time to do that.
yep.
I think now we get to the scene where Doc Holliday and Special Agent Doll say, to get the antidote for the poison, we have to go back to Shorty's because they were manufacturing the poison in the basement under the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, if you guys have notes on this, go off.
Yes. We actually have a fantastic note, Sarah in particular, about the tag team gun marksmanship.
Oh my god. It just cracked me up because it's like Dolls has this like automatic, super modern weapon where he's just mowing down everyone with his machine gun. And then Doc has like this little 6-shooter and he's like, I'm participating. Like, he's just kind of also there. And I think it was shot like it was supposed to be really cool, but it didn't look cool. It just made me laugh immediately.
Yeah. I think my take on it was they storm into Shorty's and there's between 50 and 100 revenants there. These two guys are standing in the open shooting. An instant thought was, well, it's a good thing that apparently 0% of these revenants were armed with guns.
Well, I think what we remember from the time Constance Clutie showed up and mowed 20 of them down with like a single burst of an automatic rifle, like, they're very easy to mow down.
It was so stupid, and then without any explanation, without seeing any sort of tense scene where Dolls is wounded and has to be dragged out of the bar by Doc, we cut to them bursting out. Dolls has somehow been shot in the gut.
Hunter, I just want to ask, is it a little troubling that there isn't some sort of like standard operating procedure where one would wear a bulletproof vest in a situation like this?
Well, it would have put wrinkles in Dolls' tuxedo. It would have rucked up his cummerbund.
Yeah, at least there wasn't a scene that drew attention to the fact of how stupid it was to have a character not wear body armor. Like maybe in like the literal preceding scene to this.
Or maybe when Dolls was emptying his gun safe and literally holds bulletproof vests, and he and Doc are not wearing them later.
And it's so funny. This is like an easy fix because like I know torso wounds are like probably easier to film and like they scream like this is serious, but like a gun wound anywhere can be pretty serious. Like if you get hit in the right area of the arm, that is pretty awful too.
I just don't get this approach in general. Like, why not bar the doors and throw, I don't know, torches in there or something? Like, set the place on fire. If you want to kill everyone, why are you even putting yourself in the building?
There was a throwaway line that I only caught on rewatch. Something like the antidote might be flammable. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, Kevin, you watched this twice?
It was a mistake, but enough. I did.
He just needed more.
This is a man who's dedicated to the podcast. You win the top podcaster award out of the three of us because I watched this no more than an hour before we began recording. So my rage has yet to subside.
I had to get all of the cringe lines down because I think I've mentioned before, like, I've only had 2 total this whole season, and then in this episode I had 4. So literally double the number of the preceding 12 episodes.
They 100% increase in cringe lines. Do we want to go into Doll's lizard rage?
Yes, because it's hilarious.
Because I have a different favorite scene I definitely want to get to after.
Alright, so this is just like real quick. I just thought it was so funny that they clearly blew all of the budget on on Doll's eyes changing color, because once he gets all roided up lizardy, like he just charges into the bar and then it cuts and then we come back like 10 minutes later and be like, wow, a lot of damage was done in there.
I also really enjoy his like weird lizard voice, the vocal effect they used. It's just kind of like a weird reverb. I really loved it. Good touch.
You might want to stay back. I'm a lizard now. But all that happens is his eyes change. He walks into the bar. The camera does not follow. People start flying out through the plate glass windows. I thought he was going to... First of all, Wikipedia says combustible lizard man. I thought there'd be fire. There was not. He just see him with lizard eyes and a deep voice, and then the next scene after, whoo, wow, like someone tore through here like a darn tornado. He's back to normal. He's got normal eyes and seems like kind of drowsy.
He could have been so much more lizardy and combustible. Like, where was his like forked tongue coming out of his mouth? I wanted someone to rip off an arm and then he grows it back. Like,
I told you, the whole budget, those eyes.
It was just the eyes.
It's like, oh, we didn't realize how expensive it'd be to have him have these eyes for 20 seconds. Ooh, that's too much for us.
I don't know. I think, okay, there's a point. It's certain part of transformation where you can say, this person is a lizard man, a wolf man. I don't think if their eyes just change to vertical slit pupils that counts as a lizard man. I'm sorry. That's just his eyes sometimes change.
No, yeah, if I could replicate the effect with like a pair of novelty contacts, you didn't do a good enough job.
No, he could be a cat man.
Right.
We aren't given clear direction. That Wikipedia line is giving us more than anything.
Hunter, going back to your point about how completely free of tension this episode is, Doc apparently injected Dolls with the wrong medicine, and it doesn't matter. Like, we don't come back that. There's no repercussions. It's just like, yeah, I was the Hulk for a little while, but I got over it.
Right, or gave him too much.
Yeah. No, it was both too much and the wrong stuff. Which is weird because it comes in like pre-packaged single-dose vials, so...
Yeah, there wasn't really a way for Doc to meter it out. He had a choice of, do I go with the blue goo or the purple goo? And he chose purple, which I guess is trigger the beast within, versus blue is chill out and remain human.
We didn't even know there was a wrong medicine until today. We've literally only seen the blue stuff.
And why does he even have the purple stuff?
I was about to say that!
Like... What is it for if he's never supposed to take it? Why does he carry that around?
You know how when you go to the pharmacist, they give you one of what you ask for and one of what does the exact opposite of what you ask for? Here's your birth control pill and your instant impregnation pill.
That's really... Why would he have that? It doesn't make the least bit of sense. And we've never had something in a previous episode where maybe Wynonna was in trouble and Dolls is about to inject the poison, and he has some sort of moment where he remembers doing horrible things as he went into beast mode, and right before he does it, Wynonna gets her ass saved, and he doesn't have to go full freak. I don't know, but we had never seen this before. There was no setup. It was just, I don't know what's gonna happen when Doc Holliday does the poison injection, and that meant that there was no chance for suspense because we were as lost as anyone.
And then afterwards, there's just no repercussions, so it feels completely unmoored from the episode.
And you could have like replicated this in some sort of way that made sense. Like Dolls could have been like, "Get my bag," and then Doc could have run and like dropped the bag like on him and smashed it open, and then all of the gases go around, and now there's some kind of unknown effect. But instead, it was just like the weird purple goo.
Yeah.
Yes. And since there was no negative impact from this, my first thought was, if I was Dolls, I'd be going lizard mode on every mission. Because it seems like he's been fighting with one hand tied behind his back. If when he does this, he can just storm into a room full of 50 revenants and just beat them senseless with his bare hands. Why wasn't he doing this from episode 1?
He's just not making smart decisions. It's like when he's like, you know what, Wynonna, I actually really like having you as a partner. You that has the only gun that can kill the revenants. I think that kind of works for me. Like, dude, get it together.
You get the feeling this is kind of a good combo? Like, you're the only person who can kill him, and I'm the guy who gets to be saved because you can kill the bad guys?
Dolls just really likes role-playing as a damsel in distress, you guys.
I guess.
It's a kink, okay? Don't judge.
Speaking of kinks, I have a new kink, and it's my favorite scene in this episode.
I think I know where this is going.
Waverly and Wynonna going down the alley. They're surrounded by a band of ravenous townsfolk who say, "We're gonna kill Wynonna!" And then Sheriff Nedley gives a rousing speech that gets them to stand down. What the fuck? They're supposed to be poisoned and, like, insane and crazy, and he just says, "Oh, Wynonna can save us. I don't have any evidence to present to you, but she's one of us, and Bobo is bad. So let her go." And these people are standing around with pickaxes and axes. I thought midway through the speech someone was just gonna kill him.
That would have been a pretty effective twist.
And then it just seemed really weird. All I could think of was our favorite punching bag, Ben Shapiro.
Oh my god.
If I was faced with a crowd of rioting armed townsfolk, I would simply meet them on the field of debate. That's not gonna work ever! You can't just talk sense.
I think Sheriff Nedley disarmed them with his winning one-liner of, "You remember the chili cookout of 05? This is nothing compared to that."
I don't get it when... I know we've talked earlier about how these so-called ravenous townsfolk don't seem that impressive or, like, that crazy. But when they can be settled down with a 2-minute speech, they're pretty much just normal people.
Right. And I mean, all Sheriff Dudley really says is like, remember, she grew up here. And I guess they're just like, oh yeah, I have known her whole life. All right, never mind.
Which is funny because, like, the janky-ass ex-boyfriend earlier was like, "I've remembered you since kindergarten. You've always been mean to me."
Yeah, because Wynonna tried this earlier whenever she was in her underwear scampering around trying to avoid Pete. That's his name. I remembered that. I really paid attention. But she tried appealing to his human side and said, like, "We went to kindergarten together. I was nice to you." And that didn't work. So that establishes the townspeople that are poisoned can't be reasoned with. Unless you're the sheriff guy who has a silver tongue. Baffling storytelling. And it would have made more sense if the townsfolk had just hauled off and chopped him in the neck with an axe and Waverly and Wynonna had to run away.
Yeah.
Oh well. You know, at least...
The other scene I think we need to talk to each other about is Waverly and Bobo together at last.
Let's go to the treehouse. That's the first place they'll look.
I'm very confused how after all of this, Waverly still got to Bobo before Willa did.
When Willa, like, grew up in the treehouse?
Yes.
I don't know.
Willa left before them, and, like, several hours seem to have passed, and Waverly still gets there first after, like, several detours. This is more of that infuriating, like, wow, way too predictable stuff, because... as What's-His-Bucket, Bobo is going on saying, like, "I thought of saving you too, Waverly. Ward Earp was not a good man." And then Waverly says, like, "Oh, but you don't care about me because I'm not the Earp heir." And Bobo goes, "Oh, Waverly." And then Sarah and I looked at each other and almost in unison were like, "You're not even an Earp." Half a second later, Bobo puts his arms on her and goes, "You're not even an Earp."
It just was such a setup. It was so clear what was about to happen.
But the fact we even nailed, like, the delivery and the exact line, it was
bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Again, there are ways to make this reveal happen and have it have more of an impact, because right now, after she gets this information, she's just told to hide behind something so that Bobo and Willa can skip off into the sunset together. It wasn't at a pivotal moment where she was at a crossroads of what's going on with my life. Who do I choose? Do I choose to keep fighting demons with Wynonna, or do I move to Tampa with Nicole Hott to start a new life? And then she gets this bombshell dropped on her that Wynonna's not her real sister. There doesn't seem to be any sort of impact, or like what are we supposed to take from this?
Right,
There's no emotional fallout in this episode.
There could have been something where, there was some spell that was cast or some demon that was, brought into fruition, and the only thing that could save everyone was like blood from an Earp from an Earp. And Waverly tries it and it doesn't work, or there's so many ways that it could have been interesting. This was not interesting.
It was very poorly set up and, like you said, so utterly predictable. We'd already called this back from, I don't know, it was episode 2?
We'd been having guesses like that really early on, yeah.
Because episode 2, I'm just going to go out on a limb, is when they first go back to the Earp homestead and Waverly says, "Oh, I'm not marked on the height chart." And we were just like, she's not an Earp, she's fucking adopted! So no one was surprised.
You're giving the show too much credit, because what Sarah pointed out to me earlier was, it's not just they say that, it's that they linger on it for like a 2-minute conversation.
It's a really long conversation. Because I was comparing it, I realize it's an unfair comparison, but to Veronica Mars, where there's a paternity question. And for almost an entire season, there are tiny hints about it that unless you're rewatching, you're going to miss them. Almost up until kind of they get bigger and bigger hints until you're kind of like, and then there's a reveal. This was not that. This was like, hey, we're going to do a really obvious 2-minute thing that is going to make you question this the rest of the series.
And I've actually recently been editing something I'm working on where there's a little reveal and there's the balance of, you need to put in little hints so that when the reveal happens, it feels substantiated, but not where someone can see that coming from a mile off. And I know there's a balance there, but they really failed this balance. And it's as simple as, I am writer number 1 and I wrote the first draft of this scene. Writer number 2 who sits next to me in writer's room. Can you look at this? Is this, did we really seed this too much and make it too obvious?
It's the thing that sometimes, Kevin will make a guess about a TV show that I've seen before and he hasn't, where, he'll be like, there's going to be a bomb in there, and I'll be like, aha, I see you've seen a TV show before. That's what this felt like.
This whole script was the writers proving that they have seen other TV shows before, and that they can copy those beats exactly. I actually had another prediction, which was a little more off the edge of the map, but I got it almost perfectly right. Okay. It was a lie. So it comes down to Wynonna's got to go after Willa, and it's her and Doc Holliday. And she's like, give me a pep talk. And he says, I used to have a dog named Plucky. I pause the episode and write this joke that is quoted, my old coonhound done got bit by a cottonmouth and died. And then I unpause and he says, it was a black and tan coonhound and it got rabies. So I was just like, I was joking.
That's how predictable this episode is. It's wild. You can, get the tiniest beginning of the line and then write the rest of it. It's disappointing.
And the whole lesson with that anecdote is sometimes you gotta put down a rabid dog, and Willa is the rabid dog. Which, bit of a leap there, I think. She's been in a brainwashing cult for a while. Maybe there are in-between steps here.
I guess we should wait until we talk about the rest of it, but
We could skip ahead to it.
I just don't understand why they couldn't just kill Bobo. Like, kill Bobo and then send Willa off to a psychiatric institution of some sort. Mental health, intensive outpatient, maybe inpatient. I don't know what level she needs. Someone needs to assess her first. But, like, some kind of treatment facility.
Yeah, girl's been kidnapped since she was 13. She's now, I think, pushing 30. So the majority of her life has been spent in captivity being brainwashed, first by Bobo, who was like...
her dad figure / lover, which that can't be healthy in either way.
Yeah, a lot of
let
damage
alone
there.
both, yeah.
This poor girl, like, just, this isn't really on her.
Yeah, she's kind of a douche, but she's been through a lot and deserves better than what the show gives her, which is pretty much they play out the rabid dog analogy to the Old Yeller.
Yeah.
Wynonna literally says, Old Yeller may owe you some royalties.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yes, and I couldn't come up with a better analogy that people would get for that joke that I began without an ending to, so I leaned into it. And do you want to just talk about the end? Do we want to talk about how Dolls' boss is racist against lizard people?
Yeah, we can just quickly say the black badge higher up show up and like, wow, you really fucked up here.
Yes, and Dolls' line was, what do you have against me? And she starts with, you survived Kandahar when other people should have. And I thought he was going to be like, oh, well, I thought you were going to say that you're racist against lizard people, so this is actually a relief. But she does follow up with, you're a monster in more ways than one.
Oh my god, that was... like, it was already heavy-handed at, you're a monster. And then she added, in more ways than one, just really, really underlining the very on-the-nose nature of the line.
What terrible reasoning. Like, you have survivor's guilt, so fuck you. Like, being the sole survivor of a terrible incident doesn't seem like something that we should demonize him for, really. I mean, there's plenty to demonize him for, but not that.
This is workplace harassment, and he has grounds for a lawsuit.
Absolutely.
But yeah, he and Wynonna team up. They go after Bobo along with Doc Holliday. They incapacitate him via clever grenade on a gun that Bobo telekinesis to him.
Yeah, I don't know what they thought they were doing when they were going after Bobo, who has Jean Grey from the X-Men powers and can bend bullets in midair. So, poor planning, but...
This is the part that really, like... This is where I completely lost the thread of Willa's character, though, because Bobo is now down. She's like, whatever, my motivation was just to leave anyway. I don't really care about him. And I was like, who are you? What is your arc? I know nothing.
I agree, because that was my note, where it was, she went from wanting to have a quickie with him and being like, I love you, you're my lover, you're so handsome, Bobo, to as soon as Wynonna's like, he ain't gonna make it. Willa doesn't need to be the lead. If she just wanted to leave, she could have left at any time. Anywhere in the whole course of these last few episodes where she's been free. She could have just left the Ghost River Triangle. She didn't need to take Peacemaker.
I was very confused about this. I was like trying to follow along, like, hey, what is her motivation then? And for a moment I was like, oh, she's actually in love with this giant beast that she's unleashed. And then I was like, no, I don't think that's right.
Honestly, that makes about as much sense as anything else we're given.
This led me to another revelation, if we can call it that. So we found out that the only way the Revenants can get out of the Ghost River Triangle is if the heir willingly leads them out. And we see that Wynonna's father was coerced into doing this before things went horribly wrong. Well, the simple solution is, if you're an Earp heir, don't live in the Ghost River Triangle, the Revenants can never leave. Like, why don't the Earps just move out and then the demons are trapped forever and then Canada can just be like, yeah, this is a wildlife preserve and it's closed off like an Area 51 type situation. Boom, demons are there forever, problem solved.
We get a little hint at the very, very end from the trucker hat guy who's like, it's not just to keep something in Wynonna, it's also to keep some things out. And like there needs to be a guardian or something. I don't know.
Yes, we do get that. But everything we were told previously in the show, and everything Wynonna knows, would lead her to be, I should just not live here.
Yeah.
You mentioned the giant monster, Sarah. What the actual fuck and why and huh?
So for our listeners who haven't seen the episode, after Willa goes through the sanctioned portal exit with Peacemaker, thus opening the doorway, a giant snake monster comes out and coils itself around her to devour her.
But why? Oh,
but it doesn't. Every line of dialogue spoken from this point on, well, from the confrontation with Wynonna and Willa on through Willa's death, I was laughing. Just because it made no sense to me, and everything was really trite. At one point, was it Willa who says, like, you can't go home again?
Yeah.
I was like,
just burned another of my cringe lines.
That was her last line, right, or something?
Are you trying to go home with this snake? I don't...
Wynonna picks up Peacemaker, and apparently we should completely forget about last episode where it wasn't working for her, because now it does work for her again. And she shoots Willa in the head to spare her the pain of being eaten by a snake monster. And then she slides 40 feet across, like, patchy ice to get back into the Ghost River Triangle.
Oh,
that
holy
snow was
shit.
not icy enough to pull that off. I was... No.
I loved that because, to illustrate for listeners who, unlike my co-hosts, have seen a sports, she slides... Like, imagine if you were just started running from first to second, and 2 steps off first base, you went into your slide. You still have, like, 80 plus feet to go.
It was so far.
There's no fucking way she would make through the portal at that distance over any kind of ice.
And it would just be so much slower than continuing to run. Like, that snake... Snakes can move their head down. Snakes are good on the ground. What did she think she was doing?
Just friction, yeah. You're going to slow down as you slide because of the laws of physics, versus if you're running, you can either maintain a speed or accelerate.
Welcome to Physics with Gritty Reboot.
This is my theory on the weird snake lamprey thing, which... we've not been holding out on you, has never been mentioned in this show, or even vaguely hinted at, before it pops up out of the frostbitten ground and tries to devour Willa. Is this a callback to Norse mythology, and that's why Bobo has a Norwegian name, because there's the whole thing of, like, the world tree, and there's this weird serpent below that's going to devour the earth? Is that what they're going for?
So much more clever than I am willing to give the show credit for. So I'm going to say that's you inventing a better answer.
So my theory is this whole show ends up being some weird, twisted horror version of Norse mythology. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the writers have any idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
God, Spain is Norwegian for swan, and swan's mate for life. Like, no one bases their whole personality off of a translation of their name.
Well, James is actually Lithuanian for podcaster, so you're living up to your name, Kevin.
It's actually English for a substitute, so...
Is that like a real thing?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know. I just thought, like, James was just a name that just, was words that people thought sounded good together, or sounds that people thought sounded good together.
No, English names, like a lot of names around the world, they originally described things, like how Markham is the name for someone who marks slices of ham for sale.
No one knows where the first name Hunter came from, though. It pretty much has zero meaning.
Yeah, who knows?
Lost to the mist of time.
I'm sorry to keep harping on the Willa thing, but it's just... It makes so little sense, and the thing I was telling Sarah earlier is, I feel like they wrote her character only through the lens of how would she affect Wynonna, and didn't give her, like, any real internal consistency or motivation.
That's a problem, and then the acting is also a problem.
Yeah, and it's hard to separate where the bad writing stops and the bad acting begins, because they feed off each other.
Mm-hmm. It's a bad combo.
She had a line earlier in the episode when she saves Wynonna from Pete that, like, really showcased the fusion of bad writing and bad acting. I mean, he's psychic electric Kool-Aided all of those meat sticks. And, dear listener, I promise you, it may sound like I delivered that horribly, and I did. I still delivered it better than Willa.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that line made me uncomfortable in my own skin in a way I haven't been since puberty. There's a lot of fucking awful lines here. And one thing was did I get smashed on the head by a cartoon piano and have the keys for teeth? Or did Black Badge Lady, as she's trucking away from purgatory, say, like, missiles go hot, we're gonna nuke this town? Because that never, like...
I don't remember. Let me check the transcript real quick.
like, I'm pretty sure she says that in a scene, and then the rest of the episode, Wynonna's like, I'm gonna plant a tree in the springtime. And I'm, meanwhile, waiting for fucking missiles to come down on the entire Ghost River Triangle.
No, you're right. She did. Do you have the town coordinates? When we're out of range, tell Control to go in hot. Tomahawks, the whole shebang. Boom.
So that was in my head. And then, as the truck's pulling out of town and it's crossing the line, all Wynonna does is shoot Bobo, who they were taking to an off-site location to study his revenantness, giving him a less painful death because clearly he deserves it. Because he's a swan.
I'm actually so unclear on this. He's like, please put me in hell. I don't want to have to be tortured. It's like, how does hell work in this universe?
Yeah.
Well, there's torture, but there's also significant downtime where you're kind of just at the water cooler.
But yeah, the Black Badges haul off Bobo after Willa dies, and they haul off Dolls too, and Wynonna gets a pep talk from Trucker Hat and then shoots and kills Bobo.
And where were the missiles that were supposed to go hot at second that the truck left the area? That doesn't happen at all in the show.
Nope.
Is that maybe just a lingering thread for next episode?
So next episode just starts with a mushroom cloud and then roll credits and the show's fucking over?
That would be interesting. That would be bold.
Because Wynonna at the end of the episode is like, you know, we've got work ahead of us. We gotta go rescue Dolls. We gotta kill all the revenants in this town. And I was just like, there ain't gonna be a town, honey. I don't know how they started that thread and then killed it and it wasn't a cliffhanger ending of, holy shit, they're about to nuke the town. We have to stop this right now.
No, instead they go with a different cliffhanger ending. Waverly touches, like, the remains of the dead snake monster, which then possesses her, and so she picks up a gun and shoots either Wynonna or Doc. Fade to black.
Please tell me you guys were upset about this as I was.
Yes. I mean, so the whole, like, I've turned evil plotline, like evil possession plotline, I feel like you have to have such skills to pull it off in a way that I will enjoy, and I'm nervous about this. Although I do think it could be interesting. I like that Waverly has just found out about not being an Earp. And so she was already in kind of a dark place. There could be good layers to this, potentially. I'm glad they did it with Waverly and not a character we don't know less. I don't know.
Yeah. It's bold. Like, it has the potential to pay off, so... I don't know. I like the idea of it. I'm, like Sarah, I'm on the fence about how it will be executed.
I think my biggest problem was the execution of how it happened, where they're at the gates of wherever all this stuff went down, and Waverly, by far the smartest character on the show, sees evil goop remains from a dead monster and thinks in her non-possessed brain, I should take off my glove and touch this with my bare hand, which is the worst thing to do with evil goop.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand her wanting to, like, get a sample of it, but, like, with gloves and, a container and the whole deal, this was not a good choice.
Black goop. It's Norwegian for a substance I should touch.
If there's goop, sure, like collect it in a vial. Everyone's got vials of goop in their freezer. Yeah. You've got various goops from various places.
We all subscribe to Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop Network.
It's like in Saving Private Ryan, how the sergeant has different soils from everywhere he's been deployed. We all have different goops from different places in our lives. But you don't touch them with your bare hands.
Yeah, you get a goop scoop from Goop Co.
Goop scoop is what tickled my funny bone. You really knew your audience, Kevin.
Thank you. You'd think we'd been friends for 7 or 8 years.
Oh my god, the possession thing, and I think I would have liked it better if we maybe had more of a long tail of, oh, she's possessed, this could play out in interesting sabotagey ways, instead of, she's been possessed, and 5 seconds later she will pull a gun on her friends and family and start shooting.
I see that, but that's also, at least this was a more original choice to have it, to have it affect the plot immediately. And in an episode where there were so many just by the numbers rote decision making that felt like painting in boxes on a pre-drawn out chart, it was nice to have something genuinely unexpected.
I'm still wondering if it's good, because we don't see who Waverly hits. And part of me is like, oh, it's going to be like someone who snuck up behind them, and like...
Oh no, she got Trucker Hat.
It's going to be like, yeah, a Trucker Hat or a Revenant or something. And then, so we're still going to have the plot line of like, oh, she's evil. Maybe I want that. I'm not sure.
But it was all a dream.
Right.
I think I stumbled across it. These few episodes were the only ones that Willa's actress was in, thank God.
I can now confirm that first episode, Hunter. This was one of the few spoilers I accidentally stumbled across while researching. I saw Willa's last appearance was season 1, episode 13, and I was like, wait, why? And found out she got shot in the head by Wynonna. I'm like, interesting, didn't expect it to go there. So I've been holding on to this for a while.
Okay, I didn't know for certain, but I saw something recently.
I just hoped. Yeah. I could not deal with Willa as a character. Did not like her. Didn't connect with it at all.
The acting was rough, and the writing on top of that was very mediocre, even at the best of times.
And it sucks too, because I feel like that could have been really interesting. Like, she could have been fucked up in a really interesting way that would have created a ton of tension. Like, her story is really sad, and she clearly has a lot of psychological ramifications, and it could have been so interesting, and instead it really was not.
Yeah, they treated her like such a minor character. And I guess, she technically was, in terms of, we hired you for 4 episodes, but in emotional terms of stakes, she was a major character.
There was a lot more they could have done with this character if they had made different choices as storytellers. I think they made a lot of bad ones, and that's why I'm just picturing you going to a local chapel and lighting candles and kneeling to pray and just being like, please fucking kill Willa.
Basically. Yeah, I mean, they also could have done so much more with Boba. Like, they could have set it up much more kind of like what they were trying to do with Doc, where this person is involved and has this keen interest, but you don't really know what it is. They even do the thing with Doc where they're like, he's looking for a particular woman. We don't know who it is. He's not that sleazy. He doesn't really sleep around all that much necessarily. There's more of a mystery about him. Why was Bobo like Bobo and Doc like Doc? Why not swap their personalities? That would have made more sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's the whole thing is I think what most frustrates me about this episode is all of the theming and groundwork is there for something satisfying to have happened. You have Wynonna having to choose between duty and family, like the desire to leave the Ghost River Triangle finally coming to a head. Waverly uncovers her true origins. Like, the groundwork is there, and it's just like 100 feet from the finish line, the showrunner and writers just like, cool, now let's just ram our heads into the asphalt because that's how we think conclusions work.
Yep.
It's a bafflingly bad finale to a show that overall I've enjoyed, and I think the thing I felt halfway through the episode was the stakes for this don't feel any higher than any of the other episodes that we've watched. It doesn't feel like the plot reached a crescendo and things have been ratcheted up way more than normal, which is what you want out of a finale. You want it to be a climax.
The poker spectacular would have been a more satisfying conclusion.
Let me do my poker plotline in Wynonna Earp. Sci-fi. You cowards.
That's your real ace in the hole.
Yes. I will make so many puns about cards.
Yeah, So what are we rating this?
Ugh.
I mean, it's not going to be a good rating. I feel like this is probably like the second or third worst episode of the season.
I'm going to say this was 2 out of 5 snake monsters.
I'm going to give this 1 out of 4 gratuitous minutes of Wynonna trotting about in her underwear.
I think I'm also going to give it... Yeah, I'm also going to give it a 2 out of 5. Curiously placid, zombified townspeople.
Now we get to the real deal, which is those cringe lines. And I hope you haven't burned mine, but I'm giving you free reign, Kevin.
Oh, so the only one I've got left that we haven't covered... Sorry, I just thought you can never really go home again. God, it's
So
you
bad.
can never really go
Oh,
home.
I've got 2 left. You should know that what you're doing is hella dumb.
Well, you see, Wynonna also lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a time, and that's where she's picked up the slang of hella.
Yes, as someone who went to college in roughly that area, like, that's pretty just specific to the Bay Area and a little bit, like, surrounding counties, like maybe San Jose and Santa Cruz. Outside of that, it just sounds awkward.
Yeah, it's
Unless,
hella
of course,
local.
you're singing Hella Good by Gwen Stefani, and then you're
Yeah.
good. You're good to go.
And then when Officer Nicole finally gets inducted into the Black Badge, she gets her only bad line in the entire season. You still in? Like Flynn.
Oh, you delivered it better than she did. Because that line was so bad. She, like, pauses, racks the shotgun after they say you in, and she just says, like Flynn. Which, no one knows the etymology of that term, and no one under the age of 65 uses it. It doesn't land. She could just have been like, fuck yes. Or, PG-13 version of that. And it would have been more bearable. But you didn't burn mine!
Aha! I'm surprised yours wasn't electric Kool-Aided the meat sticks, because, oh boy.
That one was really bad, and it was so bad. I didn't understand it. It was bad. It was poorly delivered. It was like a tsunami of cringe. But
I was
this
honestly
one-
shocked when Wynonna didn't just, like, stop and turn there like, are you okay? None of that sounded like something a human would say.
I also just, like, does she, I mean, I guess in the cult, did they study other cults? How is she aware of Jonestown? Is that her reference? I mean, it was Flavor Aid, not Kool-Aid in Jonestown, but I feel like that's probably the reference she's making. When did she learn about that? In the treehouse? In the cult?
Because she was 26 3/4 when the Stone Witch came and wiped her memories. And she had
Yeah.
to start from square one. So unless she sat around watching Hulu documentaries on cults, then how does she know any of this shit?
And that just feels like something that, as a cult, if I were a cult leader, I probably wouldn't allow a lot of cult watching to occur. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, sure, watch Going Clear, watch The Vow. I would probably be like, oh, you probably shouldn't learn anything about cults because you'll figure out what this is, you know?
Yeah. You want to keep them in the dark, like mushrooms.
Exactly.
But my cringe line was when Wynonna stops Willow when she's at the gates to leave the Ghost River Triangle. And Wynonna says, Mom used to come here. And Willow responds with, when she couldn't take any more of Dad's fists.
Oh, yeah.
Which could be interpreted in more than one way.
It was definitely an awkward way to phrase it.
It's like when she was sick of Dad beating her instead of, could be abuse or it could be a really weird sex act.
Oh,
Not
God.
to kink shame with the really weird, but that's fucking weird.
My worst one was definitely, see, Wynonna, you really can't go home again. Because it made me laugh so much. There was no context that made that make any sense. And it just felt like a weird Wizard of Oz moment or something. I didn't like it at all.
I think this is a perfect point to talk about the full circle sort of issue where a lot of lines in this show that are meant to be impactful come out of thin air and they're just written because, ooh, this kind of sounds cool. And it's a perfect moment for one of those callback lines where it referenced a previous conversation between these characters. So you get that little like, oh, they said that earlier and I remember that and they said it again thing.
Yeah.
Which everyone enjoys. But they could have had some sort of conversation about home or something around that theme, maybe even in a previous episode. So when she says something that references that conversation, it feels emotionally supported and not this weird dangling line that is awkward and super corny.
Yeah, Willa had all the home conversations with Waverly, not with Wynonna.
They made some mistakes. They must have written this quickly. I don't know enough about how TV shows are written. I don't know what the timeline is to churn out a script or a season, but I think that's the sense that I've been getting throughout Wynonna Earp, that things feel rushed and unedited and slapped together.
You'd think they'd know like where they're starting and where they're ending, though. You'd think those would be the strongest. It's really weird to see the finale of something that's mostly been solid fall down so hard. Because even Riverdale largely managed a successful, season finale to a very messy first season.
Yeah, they could pull off some cliffhangers in a way that so far it feels like Wynonna Earp hasn't. The other thing that feels rushed and like a weird decision to me is that, maybe this was only me, but when Wynonna started pointing the gun, I thought she was going to shoot the head of the snake beast.
Yes!
Not her sister. I mean, I'm
Maybe
not upset.
she missed again. Like, damn it! First Dad and now Willa.
To be really clear, I wasn't upset that Willa died. But I was confused.
Especially because the gun glows.
Yes! And so
Willa's
like,
just a person.
She's a person. And then the gun glows, and so I was like, okay, kill the snake beast, and then I don't know what we're going to do now. But no.
Yeah.
She just shoots her sister. Okay.
I thought the same thing of, snake beast is attacking my sister. I have a gun. I would shoot the snake first.
It really doesn't even feel like a tough call. Like, if someone is... if it's a choice between shooting a family member of mine at a snake beast, I'm probably going to go with snake beast every time.
Who was it? At some point, someone had to have raised their hand and said, we introduced a weird, slithery snake beast that's mouth is on the bottom of its head. In this episode, and we've never mentioned this before, guys, should we maybe not do that? Like, how come that wasn't a conversation? And how come it wasn't a thing of we could somewhat substantiate this? Or maybe we could not have this snake beast?
Retcon it and be like, oh no, you've awakened old Chompy, or I don't know, like something.
Is this a chain chomp from a Mario game now?
Yes.
But it also seemed like the snake didn't add that much to the scene, because Willa's outside the lines. She's doing bad stuff. Wynonna has a decision. What do I do? We could have had a tense scene that ended in conflict. without the snake being involved.
Yeah, it was an unnecessary addition, and it is a baffling one.
And like, okay, you could have made the townspeople much scarier, and then the townspeople show up with their pitchforks to the last second, kind of like the end of Beauty and the Beast. I don't know. There were ways to create tension without suddenly being like, I don't know, snake beast.
They made a really weird call with the snake beast out of nowhere, and the first time it appears, they have the ground like cracking, and you see something rope-like bursting from beneath the Earth's surface, which I thought, is this a weird wall that's rising up, or what the hell's going on? The first time you really see the snake beast is in a background shot behind Willa. It's about 50, 60 yards away, and I rewound and was just like, did I just see a snake beast?
Yeah, when the cracks in the ground started appearing, my first thought was, oh, now all of Purgatory is being dragged into hell. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, there was going to be like a huge gulf between Purgatory and the rest of the world. A wall would go up, something. Like, it felt like the ground itself, the geography of the place was going to change. But instead it was just like, nope, make way for this snake worm creature.
Yeah, I was thinking, the first Superman movie, wherever Lex Luthor's blowing up the San Andreas Fault so that California floats out into the sea.
Yes.
Oh, Purgatory is going to be separated, so everyone will be effectively stranded there. And that's our season 2.
We're basically setting it out on an ice floe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they didn't do a Superman.
It's crazy how we all had the same impression.
And it wasn't a snake beast.
And we were all wrong.
But clearly we all saw like a much better way to take this.
So
That was just very intuitive from where the show was coming from.
this show simultaneously did a bunch of really tropey things with bulletproof vests and predictable lines, and then the surprises it did throw our way were really questionable to the point of, this doesn't make sense and it doesn't excite me, and I didn't instantly feel the need of, I have to watch this season 2 opener.
You know what that just reminded me of is the last season of Game of Thrones, where that was like the main complaint that I feel like all of us had, was like, okay, this was incredibly predictable in the places, in many places, and then just unpredictable, but in a really bad way in others.
Yeah.
Not the strongest writing.
Yeah, the Game of Thrones, we'll never get sick of analyzing that final season because of, it seems like they could only do opposite extremes everywhere, and it's like always the wrong move in very different ways. The pacing is too bad where it needs to be, like it's too quick where it needs to be longer, and too long where it needs to be shorter. Characters have no motivation they need it, and too many motivations when it could just be intuited. It's astounding.
Yeah, take that, Wynonna Earp. We just compared you to the most successful TV show of the last decade.
So, I guess the question now is, Hunter, with that thrilling endorsement, should we continue on to season 2 of Wynonna Earp?
I think we should leave our listeners on a cliffhanger.
Oh no, a snake monster!
We're gonna do suspense better.
Until next time, thank you for listening to Gritty Reboot. You can reach us on Twitter at Gritty Reboot Pod, through email at grittyrebootpodcast@gmail.com, and possibly through mystical means. I don't know. We don't really check other ways.